make a start now. We are still waiting on some people to arrive. Just to welcome you all to our deliberations meeting. It was a journey that we started around December 2022, which I might come back to a bit later, in pre-cyclone days. To safely navigate us into our discussions today, Api, could I please call on you to honour us with an opening karakia?
Yes, kia ora, Mr. Chairman. Ata Maria koutou, good to see you all here on a nice crisp morning. Nā reira ki noi tātou. Whakamoemiti kia koe te matua kāroa, me ngā kia puawai tō aroha I roto mātou nāka katoa. Me nā te menui e tēnei au huri ki ngā heke o toa. Tautoko mai a whina mai ngā whānau katoa e māwiwi ana taimahana. I roto nei te hui pera me te kāinga, me ngā whānau pirimate he mamai tonu te nākau I tēnei wā. Nā reira peki te kā, peki te ora, peki te māramatanga, peki te rangi Māori. A tiakina mai, arehina mai a mātou katoa, e haere mārunga nei te huarei, ia rā. Nā reira, hanga e te atua, e nākau hau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou, whakatongia tō wairua tapu, hei a whina, hei tohu I a mātou, mahi katoa, ko EU Kraiti hoki, tō mātou ariki, āmane.
Thank you very much, Api. Appreciated. Now, as housekeeping, I'm just reading off Leanne's computer here. This meeting, as people will be aware, is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel, and no doubt it will go viral. In an earthquake, drop, cover and hold if the shaking is long or strong. When shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed towards Napier Hill, Mataruaho, along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. I live at number 40 and you're all welcome to drop in for a cup of tea. Evacuation: if an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area out that end of the building, the corner of Dalton Street and Vautier Streets. Emergency exits are clearly signposted, and the wharepaku out through the door, you know where they are. I think that's it. We have a number of apologies, and we're going to need to appoint Marcus as the Hastings District member until Tanya arrives. That's Councillor Kerr. The apologies are from Sean McKinlay, who will be joining us presently, so essentially online for lateness. And Mayor Craig Little has recorded an apology. We have Chance Tumataroa is intending to be with us, I understand. I can't see on the screen. No, it doesn't look like Chance is there. So could I just firstly move that those apologies, or could someone move that those apologies be received? Thank you, Councillor Van Beek. Seconder, Councillor Price. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Now, I'd like to nominate Marcus to be the Hastings District Council voting member. Can we do that, Leanne? Just pending Councillor Kerr's arrival. She's stuck on the Nakatopo Road at some point. Could someone second that nomination, please? Thank you, Councillor Price. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Well done, Councillor Butto, and thank you for being here regardless, and your contribution continuing. Welcome to our advisory members, to everyone online, including members of the Staff and Technical Advisory Group. Welcome also to our CEO, Dr. Pete, sitting amidst us today. So, well, he's there, so that's great. There is essentially two items of business. The first one is to approve the minutes of the meeting held, well, on 3 May, which was essentially a meeting to hear the submissions and receive them. Just opening those up. Is anyone willing to move that they are a true and accurate record of the meeting? Councillor Butto, Councillor Price. Any discussion about those minutes before we proceed? All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Okay, the decision item today is obviously the Regional Land Transport Plan, moving us into the future. We have a report prepared by, a deliberations report prepared by the staff, which you've got in front of you. My intention with this is firstly I'm going to get either Katrina or Bryce or both to speak to that report. My plan then is to go around the table for the voting members initially and then the advisory members, just to share any reflections you've got on issues that submitters raised. I don't mean go by blow through each submitter, but if there's anything you want to say around the issues that a particular submitter raised or that a number of submitters did, before we turn to deliberations and the specific recommendations, that would be your opportunity. If there's any, I guess, changes to the plan in response to those issues that you want to, or are going to, likely to be want to table at the deliberation stage, you could perhaps signal that so that we can start building up anything else that may need to inform our specific recommendations when we get to it. So that's the way I'm thinking of approaching it. Once around the table, starting with the voting members, then the advisory, to see where we are at in terms of any additions or amendments to the staff report recommendations. And we'll take it from there. So the floor is yours, or the screen is yours, Katrina and or Bryce. Over to you for now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to speak to the paper on our behalf. Look, I won't spend a huge amount of time going through the paper other than just covering off the key themes and some of the key recommendations. So, of course, as you all know, this was out for a period of 4 weeks for consultation on the plan. We had approximately 57 substantive submissions. Of those who filled out the forms, we saw that there were some pretty key themes emerging, being that largely we've nailed the vision, the objectives, the priorities. There really wasn't too much or too many submissions against those. So we can say that broadly, let's lock those ones in. Out of those written submissions, there were a few key themes emerging, being that four-laning of the expressway, for example, was somewhat, I've used the word divisive, but I couldn't really think of anything more appropriate. But within that, what we see is some people think that the money may be better off spent on, say, enhanced public transport, better active transport, and the local and rural roading. Other people were very firmly for it and thought that that should be something really top of the list. However, what this committee does know is that there is pretty broad public support for it that has been seen across time when those conversations have arisen in the public sphere. So if we move to the hearings now, as you'll recall, we had, I believe it was 14 people speaking, including Mr. Halberton, who was tabled as a late submission on the day. Generally, a lot of the recommendations that have been put in the paper stem from NZTA and or Lisa's submission, and also the Recovery Agency. So those really are the substantive changes there, noting, of course, during the consultation period, the GPS on land transport was also out for consultation, which resulted in some changes to the State Highway Improvement Program, which has been built into a proposed amended capital works program. As you'll see in the paper there, what I have proposed is that the Hawke's Bay Resilience Rebuild, for example, is a program, and the specific projects fall under that. The same ranking and prioritisation is retained as to what we went out to consultation with in the first instance. Basically, the work is the same, we just have a bit more of an idea of exactly what those big projects are within the wider program. The other key inclusion was from the Recovery Agency's submission. So what we have proposed there is that, as it's basically a twofold recommendation. Firstly, in the start of Chapter 7, which is the investment program, so the real backbone of the RLTP, we've proposed that we put some reasonably high-level commentary around the work still to be done in that unfunded bucket that's been substantiated by the Recovery Agency working with the RCAs, what that looks like, the enhanced funding assistance rates required and the bespoke funding required. And then we also create a subsection of that investment chapter, specifically around the detailed information contained within that submission. So that is the list of projects by council, costed up, put in there with a fair bit of commentary around the funding assistance rates required by council to carry those works out within the next sort of 4 to 7 years. Along with the fact that that information will clearly be in the RLTP, I mean, it gives this committee a very good foundation for continued advocacy and lobbying through a range of different forums. But more importantly, it means that those specific rebuild, recovery and resilience projects are on the radar. They're in the RLTP. And so that just helps strengthen the position of the region. We did also hear a number of other submissions, of course. A lot of those were quite similar to the key themes that came through from the written submissions, or the WUFU forms, rather. So a few around the four-laning of the expressway, some for, some against, a few around alternate routes for State Highway 2 in particular, and a few around active travel across the region. There was also Carol Ann Gard, who was presented to this committee before, particularly for in relation to the public transport plan, just encouraging very good and well-considered service design, particularly for transport disadvantaged and disabled peoples in particular. And I will note at this point that her presentation to this committee in would have been September 2022, resulted in the inclusion of some very specific policies in the public transport plan relating to working with advocacy groups and disabled groups as subject matter experts in the design of the overall network. And that is something that we are starting down the path of as we get into the detailed design of the new public transport network. So look, I'll stop there. That's a reasonably good overview of where we're at. The one other thing I will quickly note is that based on the conversations that we've been having with NZTA over the past few weeks and to an extent months, the environment is still reasonably fluid. The GPS is expected to be locked in by June. We've got the budget coming out the end of this week, and that may result in some further changes to programs or to the ship or something like that. So there is a need to retain a level of flexibility to be able to make changes in the RLTP right up until such a time as we take this to the full council for adoption.
All right, thank you, Bryce. I will be inviting questions before we get to my once around the table, by the way, on comments. But Katrina, is there anything you wanted to add to that before we have questions from members?
No, thank you, Chair. I think Bryce has covered it.
Thank you. All right, so are there any questions of Bryce regarding the report? I've got several. I'd be happy to start with them if that would help. Yeah, so I've actually got a few. Thank you for the paper, and I think you've done a great job of pulling out some of the key themes from submissions, some of which I will be commenting on. I just was a little bit, I guess, concerned is too strong a word, but there are a number of submitters we heard from, for example, Mr. Wellwood and Mr. Smith for road carriers, and Mr. Marshall, for example, where we're simply saying, we note the point that they've made, and we're simply saying no changes are made to the draft RLTP as a result of the submission. And I'm just wondering if you could give us a bit more of the reasoning for that sometimes. Is it because you think those submitters have made a good point, but their issue is otherwise addressed, or what is the You know, I just don't want to be seen to be sort of being dismissive of some of the issues that have been raised, and it might be perceived that way, phrased as it is at the moment. So just an opportunity there, right?
Sure. So thank you, good questions. I think in those particular circumstances, yes, to an extent, these things are addressed in other areas. If we look at Mr. Wellwood's submission, for example, the RLTP does discuss rail, and if we cast our mind back to the hearings themselves, Mr. Wellwood's ask was that ownership of the rail line be passed over to NZTA and the council to an extent run it. While there may be some merit in that, I think we can all agree that the level of investment required in our current transport system is so significant that having additional assets on the books of the region is simply untenable. And so for that reason, that was simply noted. I mean, if this committee would like the rail section of the RLTP to be beefed out a little bit, then that is absolutely fine. Happy to do that. However, that particular submission isn't really a decision of the RLTP. That is effectively a commercial decision for KiwiRail and other operators, and so it's not the natural home to put it as well. Can you remind me of the other?
Well, so you're reasonably happy that there's sufficient emphasis on rail through the reference to, say, the freight strategy and the rail section of the plan to be in line with our strategic priorities. Is that what you're?
Yes.
No, I mean, that was just we shouldn't leave these submitters thinking they've been ignored. It's just that their points are noted and are addressed within the document substantively. And or in the case of Carroll and Vanguard, with reference to the regional public transport plan, that's the home for her concerns. Yep. All right. Yeah, sure.
Just covering, so those submitters will get a pretty decent letter outlining what you're talking about, aren't they?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's right, Councillor Price. That's on my to-do list over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll save that for observations. The SHIP program and the prioritisation program, we heard from Lisa, for example, that the Waipawa Bridge is no longer in the SHIP. You've got a number of projects that are listed at paragraph 86 that are now in a new table on page 13 and 14. Am I right in understanding that what you've done is you've amended the table of priority projects, capital works program, by making certain deletions and then conversely making certain additions, so that the specific projects that are in the SHIP are also in our RLTP? Is that the idea?
Yes and no. So if we...
I saw Katrina nodding just before you answered.
Yeah. So if we cast our mind back to the capital works program that we had when we went out for consultation, priority project number 4 was Tairāwhiti Wairoa Resilience Rebuild, and number 5 was Hawke's Bay Resilience Rebuild. Yes. So at that point in time, those were the projects in the SHIP, and we didn't have any further information as to what would be encompassed in those. Mm-hmm. So what I have done is, based on this updated SHIP, gone, okay, it makes sense to say Tairāwhiti Wairoa is a program of work and Hawke's Bay Resilience Rebuild is a program of work, and falling out of those, or rather more specifically within those, we have these projects. And so we'll see, for example, in the Tairāwhiti Wairoa, we have State Highway 2 Devil's Elbow, State Highway 2 Opotiki to Napier, Tuwai substation, etc., etc. And so that's how I've put those specific projects in and suggested that we retain the same scoring and the same prioritisation that we originally went out with. You'll see I have also noted that there were a couple of projects that are in the SHIP. They were in the previous capital works program, but we did not include them because they were either scheduled for out years or they didn't meet the $2 million threshold. but we've suggested that we pull those in. But I've also largely built those into those resilience programs of work.
And then you've put Waipawa into the, so the key table then is the one that's at recommendation 2.12. It's also paragraph 88.
Correct.
Where it effectively integrates into items 4 and 5 of the Capital Works program, those specific line items of the program
Correct.
that are now detailed on the SHIP, right? And then you've moved the Waipawa Bridge shared path and the Wairoa Bridge walking cycle connection into projects for future consideration. Correct. That's the gist of it?
Yes.
All right. There may be some more questions about that or some comments around that, but that's really the questions I had on the paper. Other questions? Councillor Taylor.
Just had one point of clarification. I think point 71 or paragraph 71 had Todd Dawson from Napier Port mentioned at the start of his submission that something was incorrect. Apologies for not going back to listening to the recording to see what it was. Investment, the port was listed somewhere incorrectly?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes. It was in one of the detailed sections of the 10-year investment program. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but it was in the summary at the start of the section. So we'll address that with the port, along with effectively making sure we've got the right information in the body of the RLTP.
I just believed that it was a change to the body of the RLTP. If he'd said it was incorrect, we should have looked at it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Through you, Chair, it was background information.
Sorry,
Through you, Chair, I was just going to say it was background information for volumes and investments going through the port, and we just needed to make those amendments. It wasn't substantial to the programs that we've got in the RLTP.
yes.
Aware of that. It is still an error that is in the plan that becomes information that journalists and other people use as fact. So I'm just asking that his corrections be made as are.
I think that's entirely fair, Councillor Taylor. The corrections specifically were to do with the reference to the booking system and the number of containers, statement about the number of containers that container trucks missing their booking times. I think that was it.
Yes.
So that's on page 38. And that's not that well, I don't think it was port volumes and operations. Those were the two specific points and they can be easily remedied.
Yep,
I think we
thank
should
you.
come to that in deliberations. Could you please hold that thought when you get to the relevant one? Any other question? Councillor Van Beek.
So point 44 and 47, actually it's 42 and 44, 42, 44. We're talking here about when one of the main roads is no longer operational, we actually have alternative routes, and then we talk about must include a transparent and equitable funding arrangement. To what extent will that look like? Most of the detours that I've been on are just small country roads, and to actually make them so that actually we can have large trucks, that could be an enormous amount of investment and being short of money. What does it look like? Because I can see, why don't we actually just spend the money on the road that we're actually supposed to be on rather than actually make an alternative route that maybe we use once in 10 years? I don't know.
Through you, Chair. A good question. What does that look like? I think realistically that's part of an ongoing conversation that needs to be had between ourselves, NZTA, central government, RCAs and so on and so forth. But that also comes back to two key things, one being the definition of resilience that this committee developed and baked into the RLTP, and that talks about having alternative or suitable alternative routes available, and that is part of our transport system resilience. The other key element as well is our future form and function review, which of course we're bidding for through the RLTP. Now that is going to start to inform obviously the form and function by corridor into the future, and that's going to help us look at, well, what are the material options for alternative routes, and if it's XYZ, then what does that look like from an investment perspective, and what sort of investment do we need to make in that particular route over the next 10, 20, 30 years? So those are parts of conversations that are ongoing, but I think realistically, the funding arrangement needs to be such that it is agreed between all parties and one that actually just gets the job done. That is not the place of the RLTP to speculate or to dictate what that might be, but it is simply the place of the RLTP to go, hey, here's part of the conversation and here's something that we need to consider.
Okay. Subsequent question? Because there will be different parties involved, because a main route, a state highway, will have a different owner than, for instance, an alternative route, so that could make it quite complicated as well.
Good, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Van Beek. Just to acknowledge, Councillor Kerr is now with us. Michael Hardy is joined online from Wairoa. And I just respond to that briefly. That we've had quite a discussion with Trek through the engagement they've done about the Wairoa corridor, which was an issue raised by a number of the submitters. And there's two dimensions to that. There's the broader question of, do we really take this once-in-a-century opportunity to do a wholesale alternatives, different corridor, rail corridor, whatever, assessment. The commitment we've got from Trek around that is that they've actually done quite a lot of work. They'll make it publicly available and transparent, which is in line with some of the recommendations that are coming out of this particular paragraph and in the end of the staff paper. But the second issue is, okay, well, look, if we're going to be sticking with that existing corridor, and that's where you end up, there needs to be built-in redundancy, as they're doing with Tini Roto Road in the Tairāwhiti section, so that if whatever they do, a part of it collapses again, they could hook into State Highway 5, say. And then the debate is, well, whose is that? Is it a local road? Does the NZTA fund that? Do the councils fund it? Because, as you say, most of the time it will just be being a local road. And so I can really do no more than say you're right on point. The question hasn't been answered. It is certainly being asked, and that's what this paper's about, that we continue to have that conversation. But it's not going to be something that commits us to funding in this plan, because we really haven't gone through all of that exercise yet. So it would be a future conversation. Have I encapsulated that fairly, Councillor Kerr, do you think? Is that you've been leading some of that conversation yourself.
Mr Chair, I thought that was a great question and a great answer.
Right.
May I just pick up a little piece of this? So to everybody, apologies for lateness. I was stuck in 2 long traffic queues. I'm not complaining because they're doing good things. Clause 82, Alistair Halliburton. The last statement says, with particular focus on the existing rail corridor. I think that's incorrect in the agenda, because he quite clearly said in his written evidence and his words to us, he was interested in alternate, and it wasn't specifically the rail corridor. 10 years ago, yes, the language of himself and others was the rail corridor, but he, like many, is now saying we want a safe alternate. So I'm not sure how we amend an agenda, but I just felt that statement was unfair to, an unfair representation of what he was asking.
Well, Councillor Kerr, you weren't here for this, we're going to be going around the table after we've asked questions with the opportunity for exactly those types of observations, because this is a staff report and you're happy to, you're perfectly able to make your reflections as to whether that's a faithful representation of a submission. That's part of the record of this meeting. And it really is, I think, when we translate that into the recommendations, that we need to make sure we amend things rather than probably the content of the report. If it were minutes, I think we'd probably need to move an amendment. So back to questions, I think, and we did dive into a bit of a discussion then, but I thought it was timely to do so. So other questions on specific aspects of the paper, or Lisa, was there anything you wanted to say about that right now?
Through you, Chair. I was just going to note those specific comments in the paper urge us to consider these as part of our processes, and that's fine. you're welcome to do that. I think the challenge is that often these projects have a very clear and defined scope and a very clear and defined budget and a specific outcome where we aim to deliver on. That's why our comments in the last meeting were related to resilience more generally with the state highway, in addition to a local road resilient network for alternatives. And that does mean both local councils, local government, and Waka Kotahi come to the table to have that conversation. So I just want to make sure we're not diving down into too much detail, but generally speaking, from an RLTP standpoint, I do think a lot of that is covered throughout the comments, feedback, and suggested changes.
Yeah. All right, that's been a great question and conversation, and one that will need to travel alongside the RLTP into the future as that program's rolled out, much of which is really a Crown matter, government matter. Councillor Kerr, questions?
So a question from me with regard to the removing of the Wairoa walking cycling bridge and the Waipawa walking cycling bridge. I always saw these as very much a safety element, not a walking cycling element. I know both bridges really well, travelled them regularly. Is there a way, and it won't be for today's work, but is there a way of reviewing them as projects and looking at the safety elements? Because they may better fit in a safety bucket than a walking cycling bucket. And I know with change in government, we get changes in emphasis, and maybe we need to do that back when we come to a project by project element.
Through your chair, if I might respond to that, they were included as safety projects.
Okay.
It was simply the fact that they are related to walking and cycling, and those don't align with the current government priorities in the GPS, in the draft GPS. So we actually did do that.
Through you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
I've got a question that follows on this too, so. Yeah.
You can't see any wiggle room. You can't see like a little wee.
That decision was made well above my head.
Okay.
As I said in the previous meeting, at a regional level, those projects were included and they were moderated out at a much higher level.
Can I ask a question on your question about that though? Because mine is this: the fact that they're not in the SHIP anymore, does that mean we can't have them in our capital works program?
Through you, Chair, you are welcome to include them in your program. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, I encourage you to keep them in there. You never know when another funding option might come along, and those activities need to be included in your RLTP in order to be considered for future funding opportunities.
So to you, Bryce, we've moved them down to the section that says capital projects for future consideration. Is there any reason why they couldn't go back into the capital works program?
Motorbikes.
No, they can go back in there and retain their previous scoring and prioritisation, if that's what.
Does that put our bid for funding in any way at risk? Lisa, would you like to?
Through you, Chair, the fact of the matter is if it's not included in the SHIP, it won't be included in the NLTF.
It's not going to hurt us, it's just not going to
So you're welcome to do what you like.
Okay.
However, it simply won't be funded through
That's
the NLTF.
It won't hurt us, but it won't help us.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's something we can
It
come
might
back to.
help, you know,
Yeah,
it's just
that's
a
right.
matter of vision and where our direction of travel we would like to be. And the winds in central government may change at some point, and let's call it shovel ready. You know, if you don't put bait on your hook, you can't expect to catch fish.
Well said. No, I think that is exactly the point, isn't it? If the ship changes, even though it has sailed, it might come back to our vision. Yes.
I'd like to just change the subject, and I'm referring to Glenn Marshall's submission. He was the one that referred to taking the lane.
Yes.
And I wondered if we also referred this to our road safe group as an action. They can explore it a little bit more, rather than us just going, no changes to our RLTP, refer to back to the councils. I think an addition would be to road safe.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. In my comments, I was going to suggest we actually include specific reference to that policy program in the active transport section as well, as something for implementation at TA level. to the end. Road Safe is a great addition to that, because it's partly signage and it's partly driver education. And in fact, this bike in the middle of the lane in front of you, it's got every right to be there, and it's actually a good thing.
Yes.
That's basically what it boils down to. So let's hold that thought. There could be two ways to provide some more concrete response to that submission. Other questions? Before we get to comments? Yeah, okay.
Carol Ann Guard. Carol Ann has been and submitted to us on at least 2 occasions. And I just think it would be, my question is, how can we include Carol and her expertise on how disabled people get around our network? How can we include her more in future public transport conversations, RLTP conversations? I'm not comfortable with just noting that the transport plan is a natural home for these policies and inclusions. I would like to see the Regional Council include her more regularly.
All right, can we come back to that in comments?
Thank you. Well, my question is, how can we?
Oh, how can we? Okay, there you go. That's fair enough.
Through you, Chair. We did touch on this briefly just in opening remarks, but of course you weren't here at the
my
time, Councillor
apologies.
Kerr. No, that's quite all right. So if you do cast your mind back to when we were having the hearings for the Regional Public Transport Plan in, say, September 22, Carol Ann also presented there as well. And as I've mentioned to the committee previously, a range of policies were included off the back of Carol Ann's submission. So the key one there is that we made a commitment to engage with advocacy groups and transport disabled as subject matter experts in the design of the new network. So, for example, that could be disabled advocacy groups, idea services, age concern and the likes. And the intention is when we really start getting into that, which we're hoping to do in the latter part of this year, ahead of our new network, that Carol Ann will firmly be part of that, along with a few of the other key, I guess, super users of My Way, that also were either part of the older community or the disabled community as well, and just really think about how we design it to make sure it's all encompassing.
So through you, Mr. Chair, would it, to Bryce, would it be an acceptable recommendation towards the end of the meeting to simply ask that Carol Ann be included in future discussions regarding public transport?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions before we go to comments? Right. Do you mind if I start with my own comments?
Go for it.
The chair.
Go for it, Martin.
Well, I just wanted to go back to where I started before and my welcome that this discussion started in December 2022. And I remember writing the word radical on the board and encouraging us to really gear up our thinking and raise our ambition to the sky in terms of the way we approach resilience in particular. And our opportunities to tackle climate change, mitigation and adaptation through this plan in an absolutely step change way, particularly with an interest around public transport, active transport, and just doing things differently generally. And then February the 14th happened. And it really did pull the rug out from a lot of that, and I think we necessarily fell back to what is, I think, perceived in at least one submission by Jane Howden as something that's fairly unimaginative, because it's necessarily about roads. The rural communities don't have any options to roads in particular. But there were submitters that raised questions about, and I'm going to stick my neck out here more than I have ever before on this. I think it's fantastic that the government is committing very significant capital to the expressway as a road of national significance. This region has been wanting that for decades. The planning's in place, the land's there. But, you know, the valid question asked is you've essentially got a morning congestion issue there. And For 800 million, we could run public transport for 80 years, right? We could double public transport that we've got now and get that congestion off those roads with active transport, public transport corridors for 40 years if we doubled our public transport for the same cost. Would you actually need that expressway? Would the $800 million be better spent on the $700 million shortfall we've got in the repairs of our rural road network? And all of that really comes down to this form and function review, where you actually ask the question, what's this expressway doing? How does it help our system in line with the objectives of efficiency, resilience, transport choice, driving emissions change? And that's really the trouble with transport planning in this country. It doesn't look at things in the transport system way. It just says, big bang, big project, whoa, look at me. And I think that's something we need to take from these submissions, is to really think about the purpose of that corridor and how we get the best value for money, which is the GPS reference out of that investment. And that's partly what the recommendation is in the paper, which we'll be coming back to later, which is a bit different. We've been working with Tanya to slightly amend it, where the optioneering and investigation for the 4-lane expressway would encompass the local road network as feeders and integration of other transport modes, and to ensure that the form and function is the most effective and efficient. And I'll be proposing a slight amendment, having worked with Councillor Kerr on that, to that recommendation, so that it's not just seen as a 4-lane tarmac for cars that doesn't integrate with our broader strategic objectives for the transport system. And I really do wish New Zealand Inc. would cost benefit across modes for all transport investments, including rail, and including cycling and including public transport. We may come up with some very different answers. What could you achieve with $800 million if you put that into PT, dealing with your central business parking issues, incentivising the use of buses for congestion? What could we do for our emissions? What could we do for the health of our people and communities? And no one seems to even ask the question. Anyway, that's my little rant about that.
Martin, may I add 2 cents worth onto the end of your rant?
When you can do that now, or you can wait for your turn.
Just imagine if public transport was free, because of the cost savings that we would make to the overall environment.
Yes.
Financial as well.
Thank you for raising that. That was going to be my next point. There's a paragraph of this paper, 18.5.1, where it notes that there are serious funding constraints. And I'm going to invite anyone who wants to stay along after this meeting, even over a cup of tea or something, to have a bit of a conversation with Bryce and Katrina about where that funding situation's at, and really just, I guess, check in with each other about how we might imaginatively respond to those very real constraints around public transport, and look at doing things differently within the budget that we've got, so that we get the very best value for money for whatever investment we're able to make. And that leads to my next point. I would like to see, if we're being constrained with public transport, I really, and generally with our funding, which seems to be the situation with the government policy statement saying there's no more money, there's a big shortfall, we're not going to get what we're asking for by a long shot. Where I would like to see a delivery program and a quarterly reporting delivery program on 2 particular policies in our plan that I'm most interested in seeing some action on. And if I could just bear with me a second to find them. One is disincentivising driving and encouraging greater uptake of alternative modes by managing parking. We can do that. You can paint Emerson Street, for $100. I'm being, tongue-in-cheek slightly, but you could transform Emerson Street in Napier into a place for people. If you did that strategically and you worked out where people were going to park and you had a decent public transport and active transport connection to that area, you could make that happen. And I think that, alongside the active transport corridors, the bus corridors, that really are a matter of using existing road resources in a way that's a separate corridor to where you're encouraging your freight and your business traffic, your commuter traffic, and that's the form and function review. So can we look at opportunities through a delivery program and implementation program to work within constrained budgets in a very imaginative way to try and get some of these outcomes? That's the world we're into now, I think. So those were, I guess, my high-level comments on the paper. And I'll be suggesting that we make all our references to the public transport plan as the way we deliver, drive emissions reduction and greater choice. At the moment, I think we're going to have to add the words subject to funding, because otherwise we're basically committing ourselves to delivering the public transport plan, which we've got about 50% of the money for. So it's going to have to be subject to funding. A couple of other things I would like to see. Specific reference to the Take the Lane as well, and whether that's something that goes into the road safe chapter and or goes into active transport as a, I guess, an approach to safer active transport within Hawke's Bay on the roads that we've already got. Again, that's something you can do without a lot of money. I think that's just about me. I'm encouraged that there are reasons where we have said we don't think there's a need for there to be a change to the plan otherwise, where good points have been made. I've responded to the points made about, are we really just investing in the expressway for a morning peak, and should we be looking at that differently? And Councillor Kerr and I have worked on some amendments to the resolutions that are at paragraphs 4 to 7 at the end, which I'll come to later, but just variations on the theme to ensure that there's transparent and equitable funding arrangements for alternative routes and alternative options for redundancy, robust engineering, as I said, for the expressway encompassing other modes. And yeah, they're really just variations on the theme. We'll get back to that later. I'm pretty keen, if we can, to put those two bridges back into the table where they were. And as Councillor Van Beek points out, some time during the tenure of this plan, the winds of funding may come in behind them. That's me. Who would like to go next? Councillor Kerr?
Thank you. I support all the comments you've made, bar one. As somebody that drives the expressway at least twice most days, it's not just a morning congestion now. It starts from about 2:45, and 6:30 last night there was a police officer with his flashing lights. Lots of congestion, so it is the spread of congestion is getting longer. Potentially, it's going to get worse before it gets better if and when we have to repair other bridges. But I support all the recommendations that all the comments you've made. As discussed, I would like to note that we pick up Alistair Halliburton's notes that he's looking for an alternate, him and his crew are looking for an alternate to State Highway 5 Devil's Elbow, not particularly the railway line. I do support Glenn Marshall's taking the lane situation. I think we should refer it to both road safe and active transport.
Yep.
And support the other comments that you've made. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor?
Yep, through you, Mr Chair. I wear two badges on my jacket today, a Cyclone Gabrielle one and a Choose Localism one, and they're both very important to the things that I think are important to this. Obviously, I tautoko everything you just said about the choices that we could make, and I'm annoyed that our aspirations in a plan like this can be changed so easily by government, by a GPS statement, that the localism that we need for Emerson Street to be as you described, or for Waipukaro, Waipawa to choose to have a clip-on to enable that movement between the two towns, the same in Wairoa. There are things that we can choose locally, and this not just the RLTP, but the whole system. I spoke at a road transport forum, asked a question of the minister at a road transport forum recently, that the whole system and alignment it's out of alignment. We ask for things, that comes to here, it goes to NZTA, it's all adjusted to a GPS. And yet the localism, that what the people want on the ground just doesn't seem to manage to get through. As I said, I'm annoyed for Waipukaro, Wairoa, Waipukaro, Waipawa and the Wairoa cycle things in this. But I do understand, and I do implore us to keep it in there. As Lisa said, it's a way to, there may be other funding streams if it's in there. If it's not in there, it's not under consideration. Another thing with that NZTA timelines that I was talking about before was the fact, and Bryce did mention it in the part of the plan, is that all those millions of dollars worth of unfunded storm damage that we still have, and the importance of that enhanced FAR rate to not just us but our neighbours. We still have $120 million unfunded. So it's CHB has such a little portion of this, and in the consultation document, it was quite hard for CHB people to find what they could comment on. They had to go looking for it, even though I did feel that CHB was in here more than the last one I did, or the last one I was involved with. The main thing for me is number 44, the alternate route to the state highway, which you mentioned earlier as well. For us, it's not just an alternate after storm damage or after a Cyclone Gabrielle. It is for when there are crashes or other regions for those roads to be closed, and when there's to use State Highway 2 north of Otani, for example, we have state highway traffic on College Road, or going down Alsthorpe Road, or going, if there's something down my way near Takapo, they're going down Otawhai Road, which is like this and not okay for big trucks going both ways on a regular basis. And so I see that number 44 as being the purpose of the alternate route is to facilitate that state highway traffic, and they are designated detours. So perhaps detours rather than alternates, but we want and need NZTA to pay for those upgrades so that that state highway traffic doesn't become statistics in our district.
Councillor Taylor, well said. Councillor Price.
Okay, I'll open up with Emerson Street because we are doing a bit of work on that at the moment, and obviously can't comment until we've deliberated next week, but I think the lines that you're looking at are quite encouraged that we do try and get pedestrians rather than people driving cars. I guess I open with your comments on public transport, which I fully support everything you've said and everybody else. I'd hate to see us lose too much on our 2025 plan that we have. I think it's pretty good. They obviously might need some trimming, but I still think it was quite a good system that we've come up with. When we talk of alternative routes, it doesn't affect Napier a lot apart from what's happening in other districts, but Hill Road and Puketap Road are quite important because I think after what Trek spoke to us that if Eastdale floods, they accept that the road will be flooded, but can be cleaned up in a few days. So we need an alternative there, funded by Waka Kotahi, one would hope. Reiterating what Kate has just said. For laning of the motorway, well, all the reasons given, and also for Napier it gives resilience because we can't be stranded and left as an island ever again. And I would hope that 4 laning, and I like options because it might be a bit more than 4 laning. That would become quite important as part of our un-isolation. and that's, you know, to the hospital, to the police station, cells, etc. One thing that did jump out at me was the importance of the Tuai Road. I went to the opening of the Redcliffe substation just last week. It was a cold, miserable morning, and I was talking to the head man for Transpower, and he said the worry is on cold nights it's dark and there's no wind in the mornings because of that's the way it is. So it makes the hydro pretty important, and I see that that would help if they're looking at doing alterations up there, making it bigger, which makes it very important. Devil's Elbow, I mean, that one's really tough because the feedback is that an alternative, people would like an alternative. I guess if we don't get an alternative, we're going to rest assured that track will get it right. I think I'd just like to mention Bryce and Katrina and their staff for a good job that you've done here. I think it's very good and well chaired by Martin. That's really what I need to say at the moment. Remembering, I sort of reiterate that Napier is affected by all the other districts as to how you get here. And I've just got to leave my parting comment on the public transport. Please don't let my way die in Napier. So I guess it has, it's in remission at the moment. And hopefully it comes out of it, because I think for our public transport system, it is a key part for it. But maybe there's other options of private-public methods of getting people to the bus routes, so it makes it complete. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Councillor Van Dyke.
Okay, good. Once again, I think there's it's been a good progress made with submitters having input into our plan. Once again, Katrina and Bryce, thank you very much for the work you and the staff have done. It's very clear and concise what direction we're travelling. In all of this, and we're going as a Hawke's Region Council going through a long-term plan right now, and I look at everything at the moment through affordability. We're struggling as a region, not just as individual ratepayers, but actually as TAs and Hawke's Region Council to make it all work, the numbers, without actually going too deep in people's pockets or even in central government's pockets. So coming back to the strategy is that I think the theme of the submitters has been clear, that resilience of our network is very important. What we do in Hawke's Bay is move stuff. That's how we live, you know. It goes from farms, goes from orchards, goes from forestry to port and other places within New Zealand. And people depend on that as well. We've got a hospital in Hastings, right centre. People need to get to it when they need to get to it. And we need to make sure that we have got resilience in our network, which is very important. And it may be a bit squiggly, rather get there than not get there at all, very important. And no doubt our transport operators have got a good communication network in place that they can divert if they have to divert, if it's impossible to pass with larger trucks. As you know, I'm a strong believer in active transport and public transport. Once again, I can't get my head around the psyche in New Zealand, and you've heard me talk about this before. 4-laning of the motorway is a big project, and now we've done exactly what you all have asked for. Now we go away and here's the money, go and do it. But action gives a reaction. You cut your thumb and it will bleed. You need to stop that bleeding. That's a reaction from cutting your thumb. It's the same as if you actually do 4-laning. What will that actually mean for even the littlest suburb in Havelock North or Flaxmere or in Piramai? Really important what those flows, and that you can't just put a 4-way in and think that will solve it. There is far more to this. So I believe, and that's the problem we have. We've got Whakakotahi, we have got the TAs, we've got Hawkesbury Regional Council, and we've all got different views, different pots of money where we can and cannot spend, and so it actually is very disjointed. So we don't actually have flow, and I agree. It actually will take very little money for us to actually, and I call it in the European language, pester people out of bringing their cars into town. That's easy done. You have to be very brave because the public will be against you, but that's how you create a public transport network. You don't do it by just putting the buses there and hopefully people will come. It won't work because the psyche of Kiwis is totally different. They want to be independent. They want to be completely in control when they come, when they leave, and how they do that. So I think we need to actually need to be far braver. And once again, next time I come here, I'll have my little gramophone here where I play my 45s on like a broken record. We need a strategy from A to B, actually to Z, because otherwise, like you say, Mr. Chair, is if you just get the big project and we go and put some spades into ground, and we have a lot of blue at the moment saying, look, we've fulfilled our promise, and then off they go again. And blue, I mean the particular political party, because next time it could be completely different colour. And that's what they do. It's a headline, and they think it's a fix, but it's not a fix. We need to have that complete strategy. And unfortunately, here in Hawke's Bay, we're trying the best we can here in this joint committee, but we only advise. We actually can't work together. We can't direct, and that's the really frustration that I have in this particular discussion that we have going forward. What do we need to do? Is it public transport, active transport? I believe active transport and public transport will work together. It needs to be affordable. I'm being heart stung as a ratepayer by public transport right now because we're asking people to pay an enormous amount of money who actually don't even use public transport. That will get our ratepayers against us, but that's the discussion for another time. I believe we need to actually bring our community along and for them to understand why it's so important that we actually need to actually create a total strategy. But once again, we can't forget affordability, and so we have certain priorities that we just absolutely need to meet, and that actually is to connect our region in a resilient way that can handle some serious natural disasters in time to come, because they will come. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Van Beek. I'm going to hand over to the advisory members shortly. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that have been shared. I think we're actually all on the same page here, that we need to be our own region and speak with our voice. And there's another point I had meant to raise. Lisa's encouraged us, Linda, before that. And indeed, that's been consistent from the agency throughout. But this is our document. And we had submissions from the port saying that, don't put any reference to, putting communities at the centre or active transport or public transport because it's not on the GPS. You put funding at risk. I don't think that's the case. We're not in conflict with the government policy statement. All the resilience stuff is directly in line with economic efficiency and value for money. There's a lot of that in here. But this is a both-and situation. The fact that we're also interested in AT and public transport and transport choices doesn't mean we're at odds with the government policy statement. We've just got some additionality to it. That's the way I see it. So I think we stick to our guns in response to those submissions, and I don't think it puts funding at risk. As Lisa shared, funding will be directed to what funding is going to be directed to, and we're going to have to be very creative and imaginative around those other dimensions until that direction from Wellington swings into line, and hopefully it will one day. That's really all I wanted to say, so if we could perhaps hear from Api, and then we'll go around to our advisory members after that. Reflections on what you heard in the submissions. And,
Yes, yeah, kia ora, Mr. Chairman. I need to start by saying that iwi need to be behind the long-term plan. For this reason that it's something that concerns and involves us, and it also benefits all New Zealanders. Hence the reason why we need to be involved and support this plan. I thoroughly enjoyed those submissions on the 3rd of May. And they were all invaluable. Some were more invaluable. I think roading is the big issue. We need to ensure that our roading towards Waido is maintained to Taupo and back to Central Hawke's Bay. All these roads need to be maintained. This road, Highway 51, we saw what happened during the flooding. And the issue was the bridges. Okay, they closed that road because of one of the bridges. Was it Waitangi or this other one? Not too sure. And so I think a bit of work needs to be done on those bridges, because what happens when the next big flood comes? And you know, when you block off this road, man, that just about cuts off Napier, as we saw. Getting back to the motorway, the freeway, over the last 12 months, I've travelled on that road at those peak hours in the morning and in the afternoon. And the bottleneck is always from the roundabout at Links Road, Pakawhai, going back towards Taradale. And we all know why, because there's 2 lanes and then it cuts into one, prior to the bridge at Tutaikuri Bridge. And I think, you know, if we're going to be doing up the freeway, looking at 4 lanes, let's do it in sections. Let that be the first section from Links Road back towards Taradale, that turn on, because that's where the main bottleneck is, in that area. And then later on, maybe come back from Links Road going back towards Ngariroro Bridge. That could be stage 2. So do it in stages, and then maybe over a few years that freeway will be widened. I enjoyed the submission by the elderly gentleman who talked about bioplastic particles getting into the waters. You know, from the tyre, particles coming from the tyre onto the road and then being washed into the stormwater and all that, and and that plastic later being consumed unwittingly by the fish, and then us eating the fish unwittingly getting into us. So, you know, I learned something that day, and when I went home, I had to tell my wife about it, and she was blown away too. And I said, geez, we're learning something new every day. And there's a saying in Māori, kei te ako tonu ki te wā mate noa. We're learning to the day we die. And so I enjoyed his submission, that day. Everything else is important, but I think the freeway, and for those who travel on it, I don't think public transport is going to get people off their cars, especially, you know, not in a hurry anyway. And I think something needs to be done with the bottleneck and on the freeway, especially, you know, and do it in stages. I believe that's the way. And I think you're going to have to widen the bridge at Tutaikuri. That's a must. So if we want more cars going across that bridge, and that could be a start. So kia ora.
Good, Alfie. Thank you for those sage thoughts and insights, and much appreciated. I'm now going to ask Marcus. You're here with us in a dual capacity alongside Councillor Kerr, and then we'll go around the rest of the table.
Only one of us will vote.
Yes, understand. Phew.
I've been downgraded again. Back down to earth.
We elevate your status.
Look, thank you very much, and I agree with everyone else's comments. It's been really good to be a part of the process. It's been really interesting to see how this gets developed. I think the focus on resilience is just huge. It was big before, it's bigger now. And I think with a lot of the projects, we're meeting people where they are now in terms of their vehicle usage, and looking to the future, how we can do it differently is helpful for sure. There's not much else I can say that hasn't been mentioned before, but perhaps a question for Bryce. I understand there's a cover letter that comes with the document that's signed by mayors and chairs. How is that developed, and what message do we give through that?
Through you, Chair, a number of months ago, pre-consultation, it was suggested that we, the royal we being the committee, develop a letter to append to the front of the RLTP once it's fully adopted by council. Given that that is coming from the committee, it can effectively have whatever you like in there.
Thanks.
Going to suggest what should be in it?
All right. Councillor Koo, you've made your comments, hadn't you? So I think we'll ask now Lisa.
I think I'm good. I think I made most of my comments in the last session and responded to any queries and questions this time around. So.
Great, thank you. So you think we're on the right track with the plan? And
Yeah, I mean, as Linda and I have both said, this is the region's vision and view for the future for land transport. So absolutely, it sounds like there's support around the table for what's outlined and the activities. So yeah, happy with where it's at.
thank you. Bridget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, from a health perspective, just want to strongly support the strategic vision and objectives that you've landed on as part of the RLTP. And am actually quite heartened by the korero in the room from our elected members around a genuine commitment to support genuine options for active transport and public transport. And I think that can actually make a huge shift in terms of the health and well-being of our communities, and actually from a return of investment, although it's not necessarily return to you, but return to the greater system, actually huge cost savings in terms of when you look at the societal impacts of road traffic accidents, but also increasing physical activity and things like that. So I just want to really strongly support that sentiment from a health perspective. It's really heartening to see. In terms of a few specifics on the Capital Works program that's been landed, really pleased to see the form and function review landing so highly, because again, I think that is one of the key enablers that's going to flesh out the kind of details of that strategic vision of driving genuine mode shift and protecting pedestrians and vulnerable road users from the movement of heavy freight, which I absolutely acknowledge in this region is a critical part of our economy. What else? In terms of the four laning, just from a health perspective, would really want to re-emphasise an open mind in that exercise and the inclusion of active transport corridors. As has been said, really strongly support the inclusion of the Waipawa and Wairoa walking and cycling connections, even though they haven't landed in the SHIP. So really just a thank you. From a health perspective, it's been wonderful being able to work closely with Bryce through the development of the front end of the RLTP and really include a health and wellbeing focus throughout. So thank you all, and really encouraged from a health perspective.
Thank you, Bridget. David.
Thank you. Bridget, I liked the word heartened, and that's what I was thinking some time ago, actually, just that very word. From our perspective, we support everything that's been said, heartened by the discussion. Thank Katrina and Bryce for all the hard work. Also, the comments regarding the expressway, couldn't agree more about the stages. I think the pinch point is very clearly the links road to Taradale. That seems to be causing a lot of the problems. I was also thinking about public transport, and you could call one of the 4 lanes or 2 of the 4 lanes bus lanes if you wanted to, but it's imperative that we actually get that extra lane because traffic is impeded, emergency services are impeded, freight is impeded every time there's a crash. And you've only got to look at the number of skittles that have been knocked over in the, on the expressway. They just seem to be multiplying every week. So it's absolutely imperative that first stage gets done for everyone's benefit in the region. The other thing that I probably touched on before when we had the submitters, over the last 50 years there's been a number of studies done. They've all ended up in drawers somewhere and staff have changed. And it's a shame that, you know, that all that work has gone nowhere. It's you know, it's all valuable work that's been done. And the alternatives that were on State Highway 2, the Devil's Elbow, I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, but it's it just seems to have gone nowhere and it's been forgotten about because another study will be done and it seems like a huge waste. So it's a shame we couldn't actually find where this stuff is buried. So apart from that, I'd just like to thank the opportunity once again to be here.
David? Lisa, just before we get to Ian, can you respond to the track analysis of the corridors, the optioneering that went around alternative corridors, not just the rail, but how far did that go back in terms of previous investigations?
I'm not sure that I can probably get to the level of detail that you might need me to, because I haven't been involved behind the scenes, but I would say they did get their hands on the map that Tanya shared from the communities. So there was plenty of information sharing amongst the community and Trek. And I would note that there is actually quite a lot of evidence that has been gathered and information gathered as part of the work on Devil's Elbow on the bypass option that will be documented in the business case. We do tend to build upon previous work, particularly at the agency. If there's been a business case done in the past, we build upon it. We don't start from scratch. So we are definitely making sure that we document that information so it doesn't get lost. And we hope to share that in the near future.
Yeah, thank you. So that may answer your question. That was my recollection. It's a vague glimmer, but I do recall that they did cast their net backwards in time in terms of previous reports. And the intention is that the business case will have an appendix, which we can disclose to the public, that shows the level and reasoning behind where they arrive at. Ian.
Thanks, Martin. I've got nothing further to add. I'm very rapt to be involved this morning and to see how collaborative all the discussion has gone. I have no further queries, but just would like to reiterate that our industry sees the resilience as being number one for the whole area, the whole country. And I think there's been a lot of thought put into that in this plan.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Right. What I'm going to do now is start working our way through the recommendations. I've got a couple of questions and some suggestions to make as we go. And as I signalled earlier, I'm wondering if Leanne might be able to pull up the recommended rewording for 4 to 7, which we'll get to in a moment. So we'll take it from the top and I'll see if I can sweep in everything that's been put on the table on the way through. Firstly, starting at 1 and then going down to the 2s, can I just note, I did mean to ask a question. At 2.2, it says include all appropriate additions set out in the Hawke's Bay Airport submission. That's a little bit vague. I went through those wording changes and I think they're all absolutely spot on and unproblematic and add value, apart from one that referred to delivery under our regional public transport plan of a bus to the airport, because that's not in our regional public transport plan. They wanted to add another bullet point, which would almost pretend there is that in our public transport plan, but other than that, I thought they were all excellent additions. Were there any of those that you didn't think were appropriate? I just wanted to have greater certainty as to what we were resolving there.
Through you, Chair, I think that that was the same point that I picked up on, and that's just why I said applicable and appropriate.
Yeah,
Because
well,
it is, of course, covered off.
my suggestions would be changed 2.2 to say all additions set out in their submission except in relation to 3.7.1. Be happy with that? Yeah. All right. Except regarding 3.7.1. Now, can you just tell me what you need to do at what 2.9 is directed at that hasn't already been done by the changes to the Capital Works Program table?
Excuse me.
So just a sweeper.
Yeah, it essentially is a sweeper. The SHIP, I don't logically expect or anticipate any further changes to that, but there may be further changes to funding allocations for continuous programs, maintenance operations and renewals and so forth. And so we need to make sure that we can set those out in the overall investment program in Chapter 7, as well as make any other changes that we may need to. So in effect, it is a sweeper. Yes, I don't see that the capital works program will change.
I just don't want us to approve something or recommend it to the council in a nebulous way that might change in some ways that we can't anticipate. So I'm just wanting to sort of ring fence that a little bit and make sure that the people around this table understand what it is we're endorsing. Do we need it?
Through you, Chair, I think as part of our submission to the RLTP, we did request some language as far as agreeing to the SHIP, for example, because there could be changes to scheduling, total funding amounts, timing of delivery, until the GPS is locked in and those activity classes are locked in. They are all subject to change, as are some other components of the RLTP. So I would just want to ensure that there's a level of flexibility in that space, that we can accurately reflect any changes around things like that.
For how long? Because this is going to be adopted by the regional council at which meeting? The June meeting, I assume.
Yes.
So what is going to change to the SHIP between now and then that means we need to change what we're now approving?
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate that there would be fundamental changes, as Bryce mentioned. I think it could be minor variations to scheduling and funding amounts.
have the right one?
Again, until the GPS and activity classes are locked in. So maybe there's a bit of a caveat around reflecting changes once the GPS and activity classes are locked in.
Thank you.
Well, I think we do need to ring fence that one a little bit.
Through you, Chair, I think Lisa offered up some good points about how it would be potentially amended, minor amendments, and what those would entail. The recommendation could be amended to include such as, and I can't recall the things that she said, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I don't have it on hand, but as part of our submission to the RLTP, I believe that there was a bit of a caveat around scheduling, minor changes to budgeting, things of that nature, until the GPS.
Should we say ensuring that all minor changes or refinements needed are made? Could we change the wording?
Yes.
Changes or refinements needed are made to the RLTP, et cetera, all right? It's 2.9, yeah? Rather than all relevant updates, change those words to minor changes or refinements needed. Be okay? And, I appreciate the scope and the submission. We just don't want to have an open-ended resolution.
Absolutely.
I'm going to suggest that we put the bridges. I don't know about the Waipokoro revocation. I'm not even sure what that's about. But I do think we should put the Waipawa Bridge shared path back into the table ranked as it was. The Wairoa Bridge, was that actually in the table before?
Through you, Chair, no, it wasn't, because if memory serves, that was scheduled for 28, 29 on. And so we had left it out.
Yeah.
However, of course, given the changes, staff have suggested that we just include it anyway, and
Unranked.
unranked, or the other option is we could potentially rank it effectively the same as the Waipawa connection as well. So
Yeah, but
there's options.
the Waipawa one was specifically ranked through the process that led up to it.
Correct, yes.
So the Wairoa one wasn't in our program, but is in the SHIP.
Yes. What was in the long-term SHIP and is not in the SHIP anymore.
Right.
So it was in the initial SHIP when that was, what, September last year?
Yeah,
You got it?
yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, should we be treating, I think, we've done an evaluation process that satisfies me, we should include the Waipawa one back where it was. Would we be better to leave the Wairoa Bridge walking cycling connection and the Waipokoro revocation into the capital projects for future consideration, do you think? Has any thought about
Through you,
that?
Chair, the Waipukura revocation is a separate matter. That's been a discussion we've been having with Central Hawke's Bay about Rotaipa and Peel Street. We're in early discussions, so it's probably a later activity.
Yeah.
However, it is separate from those two bridge
Yeah.
activities.
But, so that can stay in capital projects for future consideration. Just dealing with the Wairoa one, should we leave that in for future consideration as well, rather than put it back in the capital works program table? It seems to me to be the.
Yes, look, I think that's the best way forward, because it keeps it on the radar.
All right, now, if you could pull up, please, the alternative recommendations to 4 to 7.
Three.
Now,
This is replaced.
This
what
would
was
replace-
there, and I'll make it big so that you can actually read it.
the change, the essence of the changes are that councillor Kerr pointed out to me, rather than urging NZTA, we urge
Don't
you,
about urging.
we're actually going to write to you. That's the recommendation. To a very, very similar effect as per the existing 4.
Urges and encouraging.
Well, it's just the motion here is that provides the means through which the urge is applied.
You speak at the lawyer.
It would tell far better. Gonna tell.
We can move an amendment to the motion in a minute. But it is otherwise very similar to the wording that was already there. It's changed the first reference to network alternatives to options for alternative routes. The item B of the recommendation up there, which is 4.2 up there, is the robust engineering and optioneering around the 4 laning to ensure that the form and function's most effective and efficient, which is slightly different, whereas the wording in the paper was suitable, and it includes express reference to other transport modes. So those are the changes, 4.2 compared to your 5. We've taken out 6, and rather encouraging Mr Newton to contact Trek, we're taking on that burden through the letter that we're going to write. But it is in essence around ensuring that Trek makes the planning and optioneering publicly available, including the design and economic evaluation used, and allows us to have continued input to that process. And that will allow us.
That's a good suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Van Beek, and that allows us also to continue that conversation about equitable funding for whatever alternative backup routes are provided. So that's what we're proposing, and I'll come back for some reflections on that. Can I just finish by a couple of other amendments I'd like to make? I would like to do 2 things. Move that we put express reference to take the lane into the active transport section of the plan as an implementation means for, I guess, better uptake of active transport that's safe, and equally for consideration by our road safe program. I don't know how we can.
So how do we word this?
Well, I can just basically move that we include reference to take the lane into the active transport section of the plan.
RLTP.
Yes, of the RLTP. And for consideration by road safe. Okay. Because there is a sweeper reference here where it's going to be delegated to two of us to work with the staff to get that right. So I think that will do there. I would like to also move that all our references to the 2025, etc. public transport plan, sorry, I've got the right date, all the references to the public transport plan that, including in policies 2.1 and 4.2, and elsewhere be caveated or commenced with, let's say commenced with, subject to funding. And we're going to have that conversation later, because it may be that we actually need to ultimately have some variation to that plan. So subject to funding. And then the final thing I'd like to do, and I invite staff to push back if they don't think this is appropriate, I'd like to add another final resolution, which will be at the end of all of this, that we request the Technical Advisory Group to prepare and report on a delivery program for the RLTP policies directed at driving greater uptake of active and public transport within funding constraints.
Nice. So I need the middle part again. Please,
Okay. What have you got?
Requests that the TAG prepares and reports on a delivery program.
Yeah. For the RLTP policies directed at driving greater uptake of active transport and public transport.
Greater take of, sorry,
Active transport and public
Active.
transport
transport
within funding
within
constraints.
funding constraints.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can make those words bigger.
I can try, I sure can. You could lead it.
Is that great? But so that's
Yes, the
the
chair.
general shape of the recommendations that when we get to it fairly soon, someone might move and put. And to avoid a whole bunch of motions and amended motions and what have you, could we just have some discussion around that and see if we can get to a place where we think we can just put a motion straightforward way and approve it? Any other thoughts on that?
Just going back to 4.2, is there room to put resilience in there somewhere, or do you think it's covered?
You could put it alongside effective.
Just feel that I'd like to see that in there somewhere, just to,
I think that's pretty, the staff may have some comment, but one of our first objective is resilience, effective and efficiency.
yeah.
Any difficulty with that, Bryce or Katrina?
Through you, Chair, no, I think that's fine. And also, all of this RLTP basically comes back to our definition of resilience as well. And so that's effectively anchoring a lot of these investment decisions and a lot of the decisions we're making in lieu of having a future form of function review at this time. So it's effectively double bubble, but
Yeah.
happy to have it in there.
I think it's quite a good one to double bubble a bit, really.
Just added resilience into.
All right, Marcus.
Could I suggest that we also have a recommendation that request the chair produce a cover letter outlining the priorities of our region that are within the plan, such as improved and funded resilience?
Yeah, would you like to, if you'd like to add that? Do we need a resolution to that effect, or?
Or are we asking our chairs and mayors to write the letter to TREC and NZTA?
Oh, no, that's happening. I think what Marcus is talking about is something slightly different. It's a covering letter that introduces the plan to each of the regional leaders. Is that
Good idea.
okay?
Yes.
Would you like to help Leanne with a resolution to that effect?
We could recommend that a covering letter is produced
By the chair.
by the chair.
To, who's the letter going to?
I thought it was just introducing the plan.
Introducing the plan.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's always happened in the past, isn't it?
Through you, Chair, yes, there's always a chair's introduction and then exec summary. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Butto, what you're referring to is the letter appended to the fully adopted RLTP that may potentially be presented to ministers down the track. Is that
Yes.
right?
Make it just very clear without having to go into
Yeah.
the body.
To explain the vision
Correct.
and priorities of the plan. Yep,
Exactly.
sure. And then there's normally a foreword that sort of goes in there that's along those lines, so. What have you got there, Leanne?
A cover letter introducing the RLTP is created.
Summarising the vision and priorities of the plan. For the region once approved, to say,
Mr Chair, is that the one signed by the mayors and chairs?
no, we're getting ourselves, I think we're getting into all.
'Cause
Marcus,
there
this
is
is your
already-
show, you need to tell us what you want and why, because I'm
So my understanding had been that there is going to be a cover letter produced that was introducing the plan and making it really clear what was in there in case for ministers for that kind of purpose. I was just wanting to make sure that it was reflected in the recommendations that that was going to happen.
Through you, Chair, if I may perhaps shed some more daylight on this. If I cast my mind back a few months, there was conversation of effectively a letter from the mayors and chairs of the region relating specifically to the RLTP and land transport funding. So the forward by the chair is one thing, and we'll set that aside because that will always just happen and is yet to be drafted until we finalise the RLTP. My understanding of this letter is that it would be political in nature, setting out the priorities for the region, what the ask is, and if I were to hazard a guess, I would effectively say one of the key points would be highlighting the work that the Recovery Agency has done, that circa $700 million unfunded on the local roading network, along with outlining some of the key capital works that are required to be funded across the region, such as our Lifeline state highway links, and setting out some of the key reasons why our region requires the level of funding for which we've put forward in the RLTP. Does that sound about?
That sounds exactly on the money.
Well, I mean, I'm just not sure that we need a resolution to do this.
Yeah.
In,
I think Martin and I could write it.
yeah, I mean,
Added into
a letter
number
from
three.
me communicating this plan to the ministers for future purposes and more broadly within the region is eminently sensible. I'm just not sure that we need a resolution on it.
It's already going to happen.
Okay.
It's already going to happen. All right? Are you happy with that, Mark?
I'm happy with
Conversation, the points noted, consider it done. Now, where were we? Any other?
So that'd just be an action point, will it?
Yes.
Yeah.
May I nominate councillor Kerr be the one other RTC member in number 3?
Thank you.
Down.
Yes, there it is.
Any other changes to the recommendations as amended that I've taken everyone through? I got everything that I wanted. I've got the subject to, take the lane, bridges back in.
Nobody else wanted it.
All right. And we've definitely moved, we capsulated that we're going to put the we have got the moving the Waipawa Bridge back into the table of our capital works program, prioritised as it was. All right. I guess, is anyone, well, I'm going to move that we receive and consider the plan and that we make those various recommendations to the council in the manner amended as just discussed and up there on the screen.
You just passed it.
Would anyone like to second that?
I still vote.
You still got the vote. I'm not here.
Oh, that's true. We didn't revoke your, okay. All right. Thank you, councillor Butto. Does anyone wish to speak any further to the motion? No, all right. All in favour?
Aye.
All right.
Anyone against? Right, that's carried, and we have ourselves a recommended and approved by this committee, Public Transport, Regional Transport Plan. With all of that said in the resolutions in terms of refinements, and I'll work with the staff alongside Tanya to wordsmith in line with those recommendations and within the constraints of them, and we will record as an action point the preparation of a covering letter summarising the vision and priorities of this plan for communication with government and across the region more generally. I think that's the last item of formal business. As I said before, if anyone would like to stick around for a cup of tea, I'd like to hear a little bit more from Katrina and Bryce on where they're getting to in the public transport context, and just a bit of a brainstorm on how we might, I hate using this word, imagine public transport within those constraints for the future, and we can bring back that formally to the table at a subsequent meeting. Thank you very much. Anyone's welcome to stay behind. Could Api, would you be willing to close in the same way that you opened, to send us safely on our way?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Ki noi tātou. Mā te atua tātou e manaki e te aki. E ara hi roto tonarangi Māori e tēnei rangi me ngā rā heke mai. Nā reira, descend upon us the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, the fellowship of the Holy Spirit, now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen.